This is Gloria Taylor Brown, and want to welcome you to the 21st broadcast, or maybe it's the 22nd, I'm not sure, of a gathering of priestesses. And this evening we have with us the beauteous Miss Ruth Barrett, the Dr. Ruth Barrett.
No, not doctor.
No, not doctor? Well, I saw
not Dr. Ruth. No, I'm not a sexologist.
No, but, you know, I saw a PhD there somewhere.
In my dreams. In
dreams, okay. All right. Anyway, she's one of the most dynamic and incredible individuals that we had on the telesummit, and we had, frankly, whenever we had a poll out there and people voted who they wanted to see back, she was one of the top 2 people they wanted to hear more from.
Oh, nice.
So, I was really pleased to schedule her and for her to have the time to be available. You know, she was saying she had just been down and taking care of her mother, and you know, we all have parents and children and what have you that we're taking care of. In fact, it seems to be part of our priestess path these days that we have to, you know, take care of our families. And of course, those of us who are in what they call the sandwich generation are having a really interesting time right now, finding out how to take care of our seniors while we're taking care of our kids and our grandkids. And oh my God, my great granddaughter started kindergarten today.
Wow.
So I just don't know how that happened. I just saw her. She was just brand new. But you know, it is a long tradition, and it's a tradition that we want to hold and we want to develop, that we're basically being there for people, and we're being there and developing a program of priestesses. And so we're going to begin with a question that we always begin with, because I know we have new listeners who haven't heard Ruth speak before. So, Ruth, please tell us, what drew you to the path of the priestess?
Well, I couldn't very well become the first Jewish nun, so I knew there had to be something else for me. Because I literally did. I used to walk by Catholic churches and watch the nuns, and there was something about that, and which I recognized, of course, much later, was about women coming together for spiritual service and for devotion. I wasn't interested in Jesus. I was really interested in Mary, but didn't quite know why. But in Jewish tradition, you don't usually see images of sacred female. You don't see images of deity in general. So I think that she called me when I was very young, and you know, you have to look around at what's available at the time. And now, of course, we're living in such a different era. It's, you know, 45 years later since the movement really began, the goddess movement and the women's spirituality movement as the larger container, where the goddess movement, and it's a completely different world now. Obviously the internet, but also the writers and the books and the artists who became published and who began to follow the trail of this once and future goddess that really influenced us so deeply, and certainly myself. And I began totally intuitively. Like a lot of us at that time, we knew we were drawn to nature. I'm using the we deliberately because I'm so not alone, although I have my own story, as we all do, in how we began to name this path. And I was raised in the Jewish Reconstructionist movement, and so the concept of a male god was not part of how I grew up. And so I could define my own sense of what God meant to me. And so I did. And it was not what my parents expected, but I was certainly encouraged to be my own person, and I think that that really helped me to not have so many obstacles in developing myself, eventually becoming an ordained priestess.
Well, fabulous. Thank you. And, we had your cousin on, Rabbi
Yes,
Razel, and she's so incredible. I'd
yes,
love to have her back on as well.
yes.
She's a bit busy, she says, right now. So, but it's interesting as we come from all these different paths. There's still this core desire to come together. I mean, one of the things that my friends and I, my priestess girlfriends, my goddess girlfriends, and I have been talking about for a number of years is the idea of the goddess ranch, which is
Hmm.
our retirement home.
Oh, yes.
And we, in the last, I don't know, I suppose it's in the last 2 or 3 months, it's getting really, hey, this is going to be real, then we better get busy. And so we've started looking for properties. And it's like, even though there's only 3 or 4 of us involved in the conversation yet right now, there's issues coming up.
Yes.
So there's issues of, well, is it going to be in Southern California or Northern Florida, or is it going to be in New Mexico, or where is it going to be? And if it's going to be there, are we going to have horses, or are we not going to have horses?
Sure.
But, I mean, these sound like, easy things, but each
Oh,
one of them
no.
requires thinking it through. And I know that you've been through so much of this group formation. I mean, whenever I look back at your bio and I look at the work you've done, it's real obvious that a lot of your work has been creating groups, whether they're small groups or large groups or being part of a group. And the questions that we had come in for you did seem to reflect that, because one of the first questions we had that came in for you was from a group of women who are putting together a group of priestesses in back east, and they're all about the same age. They're all, mid-30s. And they're trying to figure out, okay, we don't have a high priestess. We don't have an elder here to tell us what to do. How do we put this together? How do we make it work? And they wanted to have your input on that.
Sure. I love talking about this. I need to say something before I answer that question, though. A lot of us have been talking about the old crone's home. And that's what we've been calling it. And there are a lot of women having the same conversation around the country. So I think it could be very interesting to actually, maybe you do a program on women who've been thinking about this and how to create goddess spaces for our elders. I think it would be wonderful. It's a conversation I've had over the years with many, many people. So you're not alone. And I think as we get older, we think about these things, of course, and we want a place to be, to feel like is home for us as we age. So I think it's great. So getting back to the question or questions at hand about groups. I think I need to say at the get-go that if any group, there's some kind of general things I would say about groups in general and what makes them either succeed or fail or be challenged in my experience. And of course, I can only go by my own experience. And that is the ability to have good communication skills. Because without them, I think the best intended groups cannot really continue for very long, or can go, you have the honeymoon period like in any relationship, but it also happens in groups. And then people, women, I'm talking about women because that's been the most experience I have, of course, is in women's circles, women's covens, women's organizations. So, and that is coming up with a group guidelines that the group creates. I think without that, we make a lot of assumptions about, oh, we believe in this, so of course we behave like that. But that's not, one of the things that I believe we need to remind ourselves of is that what we call patriarchy, or the concept of power over, it also lives within ourselves. We can't have gone through the enculturation process over generation and after generation and not have certain behaviors almost like knee-jerk. Female competition between women, gossip that is injurious, undermining each other. It's unfortunate but true that this does follow us into our groups. And if we pretend that that does not exist, it will come up to hit us in the face in ways that are terribly hurtful and destructive to the beautiful intentions that we hold for ourselves, for our sisters, for the world, and for the work that we choose to do. So one of the things I would say, and I know you also asked about, you know, when you have leadership or a leaderless group, in quotes, how do you do that? But I want to talk about, and don't let me forget to get back to that, Gloria. I think that each group being different must decide what kind of a group it is. Every group, again, I think that making assumptions is something that we go into. We do that in all of our relationships. Why wouldn't it be in our women's groups? So to really say, you know, who are we? What do we really want? I remember that my first coven back in 1980, there was, I was ordained as a high priestess by Z Budapest, who left me with her ministry in Los Angeles. And what happened, that's a more unusual situation because when you inherit a group, it's different. Every group is attracted to who the people are who are either the facilitator or facilitators or the teacher or the person who sends out the notice, hi, I want to have a full moon circle. And so it's about resonance, you know, that not everyone really is looking for the same thing. So when I was a very young, you know, this was many years ago, I don't know, it's 2014, it was 1980. You do the math. I mean, I was a lot younger than I am now.
We were all children then.
We were all children, and wonderful children, and idealistic children, and we were so excited about this goddess thing that we were doing, and the rituals, and we were affirming ourselves, and we were crazy giddy with ecstatic joy at what we were discovering together. And that's the beauty part. The creativity and the sparks of inspiration and the way we express that. That's what the goddess movement to me is made up of, those moments. So we had a meeting with, you know, when Z Budapest left Los Angeles, a lot of women left. I had to start over. I was the leader I was. And so what happened was we got together with a lot of the women who were interested in continuing, and again, most of them left, so there were new people who had come in. And we talked about what is it we want, how much political work do we want to do with our magic, because the Dianic tradition is also a feminist tradition, so we do magic around political things as well as personal. And some women said, you know, I just really want to get together and have a good time. I want to party. I want to party with my sisters. Mm-hmm. And I really don't want to talk about politics. You know, so we had women who said, well, I don't really want to party. I want to really I want to change the world. I want to, you know, I want to do magical work and spellcraft with my sisters and, you know, make those kinds of commitments and do it with others. So basically, the group had to decide, and I was officially in charge. So it wasn't exactly a free-for-all because I inherited a particular orientation. So I knew that it wasn't going to be a party coven, that we were here to do important work. And so the way we worked it out was, this may not be the right place for you because we're doing this. And we're not really, while we're also having a good time, the main focus is this other thing. So I think that if women understand that that one group is not the be-all, end-all, we don't have to necessarily be trying to change something that really has a very strong intention. And it's embedded in a lot of Wiccan traditions, the idea of hiving. The word hiving, like, you have maybe more than one queen bee in a nest, and instead of fighting about it, you go and you bless each other for going in your different ways. It's easier said than done. I understand that. However, it works out so much better if the group understands that one group is not going to necessarily meet all the needs for every single person.
Mm-hmm.
So over the years, I did some very hurtful things when I was younger and didn't know better. I learned a lot since then, made amends to women I hurt in my early leadership years. I think that is extremely important, to take responsibility for when one makes a mistake. However, well-intentioned, we do this. We will hurt each other. And I know that sounds intense to say, but we will hurt each other. We will disappoint one another. So the question is, what will we do when that happens?
Mm-hmm.
Not if that happens, but when that happens. So I have in my classes that I teach, and in our priestess training program, which is a mystery school, the very, very first thing we do, even to come together as a group wanting to study together, is we have what we call tools and practices. And basically, they are guidelines. They're guidelines for how are we going to be together. Because in any situation, there's going to be some people that you're going to like more than others. That's normal. But how are we going to treat one another? And what if something comes up that is really difficult? How will we handle it? And can we make a commitment to go through the discomfort to have honest communication that is about, let us figure out what to do because there's a problem here. Mm-hmm. And we want the group to work. So one of the things that has worked really well for me is to always approach challenges in groups or with individuals in a we context. It's not just her problem. It's how will we work it out if we are going to continue in relationship with one another, or if one of us has hurt the other, however unintentionally that might be. I hope I'm on the right track here with with the question.
It's something that's come up from, and even to the point of in casual conversation the other night I was having with a young woman, not a young woman, a woman my age, and she was saying how difficult it is for her to have girlfriends or friends. Yes. And I told her a little bit of my story, which is that I realized when I was in my late 30s to early 40s, I realized I didn't have any girlfriends. Mm-hmm. I almost exclusively associated with men. The business I was in was 99% men. I was in real estate development, and the only women there were interior decorators and realtors that we didn't deal with because they weren't commercial realtors. Mm-hmm. And I decided I wanted to be in relationship with women. And I didn't want to just be in relationships with women. I wanted to be in long-term relationships with women who I could call my friends. And I didn't know how. I didn't get the skills. I was raised in a military family. We moved every 18 months to 2 years. You didn't like who was your neighbor, don't worry about it. They're gone in 6 months anyway. So, and you never see them again. So, rarely. So I did not develop those skills that people who went from kindergarten to 12th grade with the same group of people had to develop, where, you know, you had the same group of people there, and you had to figure out who were your friends, who weren't your friends, who were the mean girls, were you one of the mean girls?
Right.
And so I was talking about it, and I was talking about how, you know, I actually approached it almost as though I was learning a software program.
Sure.
That
yeah.
And I had to study it. I mean, I had trained in relationship counseling for several years, but I had never trained in relationship counseling for women, just women on women.
Yes.
And I learned there were a lot of ideas, presuppositions of how women are in relationship, and some of those I didn't want to have. Like, I didn't want to be in a relationship where you're having to constantly watch your back, you know, because if you're not present, they're talking about you. I mean, I've been in those, you know, circles where you walk into the group and everybody goes silent, and you go, shit, they're talking about me. And I've also been, I'm, as I said, I spent most of my time in relationship with men, so I had a very direct, very firm way of being in the world, and it wasn't exactly appreciated by some of the women I was working with, or I was meeting. So these things that, even though, you know, you're in a group, you're still in relationships. You're still dealing with relationships.
It's also every woman. This is the thing that we have to remember. Every woman is coming to that experience carrying the enculturation that we are raised with.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, this is one of the gifts of the feminist movement, was to really talk about how do we internalize the values of the dominant culture in our personal relationships with women, of course, as well as with men, and of course with our children also, and our co-workers. I think that we don't just come in as a blank slate in it. We're, like you said, you came in, you know, not having had a lot of experience because of you moving around and all the impermanence part of it, but also if everyone does their good girl training, then we are going to not trust each other. We will be competitive. We will try to get the little piece of cheese that might be available in the workplace for one woman, and so on and so forth. So when women come to spirituality circles, I believe in order even to get there, they have to be hopeful it will be different. However, and often it is, however, it can't stop just there. We have to talk about it with each other. What does sisterhood mean? What does it mean? What are the values apart from the dominant culture that we want to, in a sense, have a space to work it out and figure it out? Figure it out. Who would we be without the enculturation of the power over dynamic, of the ranking concept? I'm gonna, you know, I have to one up you, or be one down from you. And how do we meet as in a partnership way together? So I think for me, one of the biggest things that I've certainly learned is that wherever you go, there you are. And so if you don't continue to work on your own stuff around how the dominant culture has affected you, you'll just repeat it in your women's groups. It's just, how could we not? So in a way, you have to say the emperor has no clothes to yourself and in the groups that you're in, meaning we can't pretend that the outside world isn't here, isn't in the circle. And so the talking about it, exposing it, you know, why is there female body hatred? Like 99.9% of women have that. It feels personal, but it's not. It's very calculated, so we're so obsessed with the way we look, we don't do anything about other stuff. You know, I mean, it's social engineering over generations. So we have to, I think that in order for us to really do amazing work together and to really learn what does it mean to really be seen and appreciated for who you are, apart from how much money you make, what you do for a living. I don't ever know what my students do. It's not relevant. I want to know who you are on the inside. What are you doing to make the world a better place? What are you doing? What kind of stuff are you working on personally in the creative realm? All those kinds of things. So I think that when a group comes together, sometimes we don't know the questions to ask. We just know we want something different, but we don't necessarily know what that exactly is or how to talk about it yet. So I think you kind of, you know, when women come together and they have some wonderful ideas, we want to do rituals together, or we want to have a full moon circle, or we want to have discussion group, I think that we also need to talk about, so what do we do if there's conflict in the group? What can we bring to each other so we can do it different, so we have a fighting chance to really be in relationship, like you were saying, Gloria, for the long haul, not a casual, you know, I can leave at any time because I don't really care about these people. It depends on what a group, you know, what people want. So, I mean, even as simple as, do you expect people to show up on time? Right?
Yes.
I mean, really simple things. Do you want people to show up without having ingested drugs or alcohol? I mean, I know it sounds like a no-brainer, but you would be surprised, because I really have seen and heard it all. And they don't talk about that. You know, what kind of food do you want to have at your potluck? Do you want to have Oreos? Do you want to have, you know, kale salad? I mean, you know, those. What would support the body as temple, if that matters? If that matters. It may not. It may be, let's have quinoa and Oreos, and that's fine. Let's just talk about it. So, and, you know, what maybe it sounds simple but difficult, is to, when you're having a conflict with someone, is how do you begin to initiate conversation, because you're, you know, about, you know, what you said really bothered me, and I feel like it's gotten in the way of our relationship. Can we talk? Those kinds of things. We don't have to have figured it all out, but we just have to be honest. And honesty, by the way, is not an excuse for being cruel or brutal. That is not effective. So, but avoiding conflict is also not effective, because it builds up, and then what we tend to do is just go away instead of, you know, risking that things might turn out different than we think. Anyway, those things are some of my thoughts. I've got lots and lots of other thoughts, but those are some of them. But also, don't be afraid to look for women who share your values. You know, I think that those kind of, if you know, if it's not a match in a group, then it's not a match. You know, and then you open yourself to finding others, or you put out your own shingle and say, I'm looking for women interested in this kind of activity or that kind of activity.
I think that's very important, and Maria made a comment here. She says, this is such an important discussion. The relationships of women become so distorted over the course of history, We've been taught so many dysfunctional ways of being. I've been diligently studying and planting seeds in new ways of communication, and I'm seeing the growth in my life. It is so worth the work.
Yes, it is so worth the work. I can't even begin to tell you how much I agree with that. It is worth the work. And you have to be really honest with yourself in the process. You know, what do I want to get out of this confrontation or this conflict, or, you know, and what do I want the end result to be? Because if you want it to be just, I want to, you know, tell her to go F off, then that's, you know, don't expect to have that go well. Or, you know, the knee-jerk reaction is not always the best thing to do. Find a place to blow off steam and then think about what it is you really want to co-create together. Even if you decide you don't want to be in relationship any longer, you still don't have to do it in a hurtful, horrible way.
Yeah, I agree with you so much about that. And we have one person who's having trouble, a little bit of technical problems, so I'm trying to get her on here. Yeah, I agree, and it's so necessary that there be rules is not necessarily the word, but agreements.
Yes, guidelines.
This is how we're. In other words, we're not going to go into something, and we're not going to accuse. We're not going to be. We're not going to be doing finger pointing. We're not going to be blaming. We're not going to do shaming. And I was trained in small group dynamics with working with Centers for Spiritual Living. I ran small groups for Center for Spiritual Living in Seattle for a number of years. And there are definite, you know, you don't do this. You know, you just don't, you don't show up and throw up. Which,
right, exactly.
Is one of the main things that I've objected to in women's groups. Because not only do they show up and throw up, they throw up the same thing every week for ages.
Yes.
So it's very, very frustrating whenever you're sitting there, and of course you're not supposed to provide advice or provide information, but you know, because what they're sharing is their own personal issue. But after a while, it's not their own personal issue. It's their own personal, you know, whine. And
right.
If you're not going to do anything about it, don't tell me about it.
Well, I want to just say that in my first coven, what we did around that, because a lot of us had a lot to say, and we were going through all these changes, of course, is we had we would meet on, you know, we would. New moons and dark moons being so close together, we would decide about that. But we would have one of the meetings, we would meet twice a month, and one of the meetings was literally a check-in. That was what it would be. And we had time limits. We agreed on time limits for how long someone could, you know, talk about whatever it was. So you can have, you know, so that, but part of this is the same thing I said at the beginning. Is your coven a therapy group, or is it a magical group? Okay, and if it starts becoming more of a therapy group, then the group needs to talk about whether that's really working. But you can talk about that at the beginning. But sometimes you just, like I said, you don't know it in the beginning. You kind of figure it out as you go. I can certainly mention a few things that I've had in group guidelines, if that would be of help to some of the listeners.
Sure.
I would be happy to. I got my glasses out to check it out. These are some of the guidelines for our mystery school, the Spiral Door Women's Mystery School of Magic and Ritual Arts. And these are, we called them tools and practices. Tools because they are tools. They're things that you can work with and then practice. So practices is part of it. I'm just going to pull a few of them, because the other thing is that if you're working in magical circles, your life will change. So that is almost like a given, but when change really does happen, people start flipping out. So how are you going to deal with changes, especially if they changes that will occur in your life? So one of the things that I wanted to mention is this point here: use personal and professional support outside the group for mental hygiene and life issues. That's one point. Take active responsibility for your own needs and ask for what you want, instead of waiting for someone to say, I noticed you're really upset right now. Like, just being able to take responsibility for your energy in a group, for that matter. Expect resistance, big shifts, and some discomfort. It's part of the process. Roll with it. Come from a place of insight, respectful of personal inner work of others. Make a commitment to figuring out and understanding your own issues, and do it regularly with support. Practice perfect love and perfect trust. Enter your work with yourself, your group, and your community with a commitment that we are all sacred. You only see a part of every story, and your respect for others is one of your most important contributions. Identify your assumptions. Check them out. Practice discernment. Learn how to sort out what is yours and what is theirs. Anyway, those are a few. The list goes on.
Well, I think that's a fabulous list, and what I would like to ask you is if you wouldn't mind sharing that list with us, and I will send it out with the link to the video, because I think this is a question that many of us are dealing with. We deal with it on a regular basis, how we're going to be in relationship, whether our group is a team that we're working with at work, or whether it's the group that we're working with spiritually. But I always hear, there's one word there that I always hear my grandmother speaking whenever I hear someone say it, because we used to, we would say, oh, I assumed you were going to do it. And my grandmother says, that's one word that makes an ass out of you and me.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Can't agree more. Good job, Grandma.
Yeah. Grandma had one other saying, which has chased me around my life, which is, if you see a job, it's yours. I can walk,
right. Yeah.
I can walk to a kitchen and not see a single dish. But, yeah. So I've always, those are things that, she probably said them to me 100 or 200 or 300 times whenever I was a little girl. And they became ingrained in my head, and it's like, okay, we don't assume. We never assume. We never assume that somebody else is going to do something, or say something, or that they even got the message.
Right.
One of the things that drives me crazy is when people call me up and start talking to me like they know me, and I don't know who they are.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's hard.
Assume. Don't assume I've put your phone number in my phone.
Yes.
Don't assume I remember you. I've got 4,975 friends on Facebook, and I was going through it the other day, and I realized I had to go down to about 3,000 before I started getting to people I didn't know.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. So
I wanted to. There was a question in the beginning that I wanted to talk about, because I know how fast the time goes here, and that was about leadership in group of women where they are basically learning together. Yes, a kind of a peer group that's learning together can be a absolutely fantastic experience. I think that what I would say is, allow each woman in the group to really find her own way of making a contribution. It doesn't have. We're not the same. We don't all think the same way. We don't all process information the same way, and there like some groups do rotational leadership, where one week this woman will be the practice high priestess, and the next week they'll rotate it, and there are some of us that really don't like to do that at all. I'm not a fan of forcing people into things they don't want to do, but what I am in support of is, what would you like to do? What do you enjoy that you would, that would be consistent with the purpose of the group and be something that you would really enjoy doing and taking the leadership role, if you will, by introducing what the event is going to be. And and I'm going back to my first coven again, because I learned a lot. I learned a lot of wonderful things, and I learned because we all fell on our faces on a regular basis. And one of the things was, like, there was a woman who didn't talk much in the coven. She just didn't have much to say. She was newer. She was more like absorbing, information. But she was an amazing cook, and she made the most incredible Sabbath for the holidays, for the seasonal holidays. She made the most wonderful Sabbath feasts, and she loved to research foods that would be traditional for these holidays that we would celebrate. And she later became a wonderful storyteller, but she found a way that she loved to contribute to the group without everyone having to be the same. We're not the same. So if we try to make it that we all have to be the same or similar, I don't think that really ultimately is successful. Plus, it's really not going to happen, and more hurt feelings come from that. So it's more like supporting. How can we support each woman in the group by learning and becoming more of who she would like to be? So it doesn't always work out evenly. And, in terms of leadership, some women are better at it than others for different reasons. Some are quieter, but they have really wonderful things to say when they're given an opportunity to speak. So you have to leave space for women who are quieter also to have a voice.
Artemis says, yes, I have to consciously and often question myself when I've been judgmental or dismissive of women. It's as a spiritual practice. She looks at that. And
wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Yes. Yes. I think that women in leadership are. I know it'll sound heavy, but I think that women in leadership are doomed when they stop doing the self-facing. I have never ever stopped. And even when someone says, I think says something like, I think, you hurt my feelings, or you're doing this, I have to pause and really look at whether in my experience, I was aware of doing something. But what's also important is to validate a seed of truth, even if you're not sure what the seed of truth is quite yet. What happens is that I'm a witch, I'm psychic, so are a lot of us, and so, but sometimes what we think is going on is not necessarily, we're picking up on something, but what we evaluate it to be, or what we assume it to be, may not be accurate. But what's important is to validate that I'm picking up on something, I'm thinking that it might be this, but I need to check it out with you, because there is something that there's an energy I'm not comfortable with, or whatever. What's great is, in a group, if someone is willing to look for the seed of truth and say, I was in a really bad mood. It could have been a little seed of truth that I had bad news today, and I've been carrying that with me all day, and you must have picked up on that, but I actually don't have anything with you. There's something we can validate, something, because we do pick up intuitive information, but the meaning we assign to it may not be accurate. And so sometimes, we're always thinking it must be about me, I must have done something. Maybe, maybe not. check it out. Have someone work with you and say, I need to check this out. And if there's even a grain of truth to it, I'd like to know.
I think it's also important to realize that sometimes we say something not intentionally, not intending to hurt someone, and it's just that hit them the wrong way that day.
Yes.
And I believe that one of the most important things we can do, and this is one of the things that Sandra Ray taught me early on when I was in the loving relationship trainings, was clear the air. Clear the air as soon as possible. In other words, if somebody says something to you and you think that they may have been critical or what, immediately ask, did you mean that you don't like what I just did? Or you don't like how I did this? Or is there an issue here that we need to discuss?
Right.
Don't carry it for 6 months.
Oh, how about 6 years?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. I think also, especially in groups of women who have come together for wonderful reasons, why should we assume that the other woman was intentionally trying to insult us or hurt us? You know, so give your sister the benefit of the doubt and to check it out. Mm-hmm. Don't assume, you know, you're on the receiving end of something that may not be accurate. And of course, if you find out you're right, then you have other things to talk about. But don't assume.
And, you know, I mean, even we had a situation once where someone laughed at somebody else's issue. Mm-hmm. And truthfully, I think that the point was that they were laughing because they were very uncomfortable by what had been shared and by what had been said, and they were trying to deal with it.
Right.
Well, no one thought much about it. We went on, and several months later, the person who had felt laughed at tendered her resignation from the board. It was on the board. Mm-hmm. And the reasoning was that this person had laughed at her whenever she was sharing something really deep and you know, conscious on her part. Yes. And it was unintentional. You know, in fact, the person who laughed couldn't even remember the remark. But the other person had carried it for months like a festering wound. So
sad. So unnecessary.
Yeah. So I think that it's really important that we look at that. And I know that, you know, you've worked so much with groups of women and even in your teachings, I know that, you know, you're basically teaching as well. Yes. Whether you're teaching them, I mean, whether you're teaching music or whether you're teaching spirituality, it's still you're working with a group that has to have certain ethos around it, that of how it's going to operate in the world. And so one of the things that I particularly wanted to ask you about was we have some women who are they're not coming from a group. They're coming from their solitary. Mm-hmm. They're looking to form a group. Mm. So they don't have a group yet. They're looking to form it. So they're not quite sure, okay, well, how do I step out and ask people to be part of my spiritual group whenever I don't know whether or not they're in the same spiritual vein, or I don't know, you know, in other words, they don't want to be hurt. They want to be rejected, but they also want to be with others.
Yes. Okay. Oh, yeah. Well, again, the individual needs to be very, very clear about, as clear as she can be, about what it is that she wants in a group. Comes back or circles back around to that, because then she can say, I am interested in forming a group around this. She can send it out to her friends. She may not, and you know, the women she knows, but if it's not of interest to them, what's important is that she is, I would say, great. You know, they're not interested, so you save yourself a lot of time, and you know, put it out there, and you can also have conversations. I have two of my dear friends in Florida, who are starting. They've been starting a circle in Kissimmee, Florida. Oh. And they put out they really did that. They wanted to work with other women, and so they put it out and sent notices out through different, I guess, pagan or Wiccan organizations around, and they would meet and talk with people. But remember, it may not be a fit, and you just have to not get so worried about it. If it's not a fit, it's not a fit. Okay, but when it is a fit, when the group, when a woman comes in and you know there's something we can learn from each other, you can give it the time you need to get to know one another. If it doesn't work out, you go your own. You go your ways. You're not getting married. You're having, you're meeting around things that are important to you, though. So remember that those are the things that are important. Whatever your intention of your group is, whether you're the one forming the group, especially, what is it that you want? Do you want to have a group where you're going to get together and read a spiritual book together and talk about it? Are you going to be a ritual making group? Are you going to be a support group? I mean, all of those kinds of things. One of my dear friends who used to live in New Mexico, she put out she knew that she wanted a ritual group, but she kind of put it out like, let's get together and sing chants together.
Mm-hmm.
And that turned into a wonderful thing. She ended up getting to meet wonderful women through that, and some of the women she started to work with in other ways. So there's many different ways to get there. But being clear about what ultimately you are, what is your desire, what is your passion, that is something that you need to know.
I love what you're saying, and I agree with you on this. And it is part of who we are and how we're going to be in the world, and expressing that as we're moving forward into the world. But one of the things that some women, they simply don't know what they want. They're floating out there, and they float from group to group, and they go, I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that.
That's good. That's okay. That's some do work in that way. I know what I don't want. But think about, when I say no to this, what am I saying yes to? Is there anything that I could say yes to? Mm-hmm. That I know I don't want this. I know I want more of that. But I think, if you can go to open rituals, some communities put out open rituals. It's becoming more. I mean, that's something in the Dianic tradition that we've always done, is have open rituals. Not 100% of the time, but a lot of the time. And so that's a way that women can come in and you can get to know each other, and again, it'll either be you resonate or you don't.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. So let's talk a little bit about what Ruth is going to be doing next. Coming to the end here.
Yes.
What have you got?
Well, one of the things I'm really excited about is that I'm going to start teaching a course for Cherry Hill Seminary this next week. On Tuesday evening, I'm going to start teaching a 4-week class on personal ritual that works, creating personal rituals that work, and that, frankly, I think that registration is still open, so if there's anyone listening that wants to, this is something that is going to be done online, but we're going to have like not podcast, but Skype involved, and so I'll be teaching that, and I'm very excited. I've never taught online before. It's not my preferred way of working, but I'm very excited that what I'm intending will work in this, for an online situation. So there is that I'm doing. And then I'm going to follow that with a program of classes through Cherry Hill on helping others create their personal rituals. So the first series of classes that are starting this Tuesday are a prerequisite for the second one. Because when we're in, the book I wrote, Women's Rites, Women's Mysteries, Intuitive Ritual Creation, that book is all about where do you begin creating ritual for things that are meaningful for you. And that's why I wrote it. So a lot of things are drawn from my book for this upcoming course, but I'll be able to give more personal advice and give feedback because I'll be talking to the individuals registered in the course. I'm also planning on doing a lot more writing this fall and winter. I'm absolutely, I don't even know what the word is. I feel the pressure of time. Now I'm in my crone years to do more writing that hopefully will be of interest to the daughters that follow and their daughters. And if it's not, then I will have at least written another book. And so I would like to really, what I would really enjoy doing more is to work with therapists who are wanting to incorporate ritual making with their clients. Because I've done some of that, and it is just another tool for the toolbox. And for some people, it will be I think, a very empowering tool to have, is how to help their clients create rituals around whatever their issues are. So those are some of the thoughts that I've got going on.
Okay, so if people want to get in touch with you, I just put up the Cherry Hill link and the Dancing Tree Music link. How would they get in touch with you?
You know, the best way to probably contact me about classes would be to write to, as an email, would be Guardians of the Grove. That's like it just spelled out like that. Guardians, plural, of the Grove at yahoo.com. That is the Grove of Temple of Diana. Temple of Diana is a national Dianic organization, but this is the grove that I co-created with Falcon River here in Southern California. We have many groves, and we have some groves in LA, one in Michigan, an upcoming in Florida, and also in Wisconsin. So we try to have, you know, opportunities for women wherever they live. I want to say that the Cherry Hill course is open to women and men. The material is not going to be focused on women's mysteries, and so the ritual making process is the same for whether you're male or female, because you're working on your own stuff. So if there are any men that are listening and are interested in that, you can certainly register, and I would be helping to guide you on creating your own rituals for your own life.
Now, we do have some staunch men who listen in and listen in later, and also we actually have one man that has signed up for membership in the Gathering of Priestesses so that he can watch all the videos. So
Great.
I applaud him. So as we're coming to the end here, and regretfully, as we found out, we just have another conflict, we are going to be moving a Gathering of Priestesses to Tuesday night. I did a poll, and everybody said, "Oh my God, please don't put it on Wednesdays." I've got 3 things already, and Thursdays is personally difficult because I'm in the season of events, and which means they start on Thursday. So we're going to be moving to Tuesday night. It'll be the same time, 6 o'clock Pacific time. And, of course, they will all be available on YouTube afterwards. And all these videos that we're doing now are staying available on video. On YouTube. They're not going behind the membership doors. They'll be available there. But they're going to be openly available and openly available on iTunes and other ways as well. So they will continue to spread the word and to be able to allow people to know about us. This next week on Tuesday, which will be September the 9th, we have Andrea Goodman returning from the coast of Maine, and she's going to be talking to us about astrology, and which is a subject that she knows a great deal about. She has a lovely new course that she's going to be bringing out as well. And then we have a number of other people who are going to be here during the next few weeks. friends of mine, people I haven't met yet, ones that were in the Priestess Gathering and ones that weren't in the telesummits. So we have a number of different people. And I really want to thank you all who have been sending in articles for the magazine. We have the Priestess Magazine, which will be debuting shortly here. As some of you know from my email, I had a catastrophic failure, and one of the things it took with it was the magazine that I had laid up. So I now get to do it again, so I can do it better this time. And let's see, other than that, we do have, we would ask you to join us at a gathering of priestesses.com, which is a membership site. You will receive discounts on classes and also special information from there that you won't receive anywhere else. And we basically want to create an international group that reaches out to all women who serve the divine, whether you are Wiccan or Buddhist or whether you consider yourselves to be a staunch Baptist. I don't care. If you serve the divine, you're a priestess, and you belong here. Now, I want to say that, you know, the tagline that we came up with for this was to educate, evolve, and enlighten. And I hope that every one of these shows educates you, helps you evolve, and helps you enlighten yourself and those around you so that you have the opportunity to be present and to provide people with a group that will help them grow, because that's what groups do. They provide you with that melting pot where you can see yourself in another person and you can step up and say, oh, is that what I'm doing? I don't want to do that. That wasn't my intention. And step back and say, I want to be in another space. Or it's a place where you can create magic. Whenever you come together and you create ritual and you create magic. And the magic is so juicy and wonderful. And I really want to applaud those of you who come together on a regular basis and have done so. I mean, I know several groups that have come together for as much as 21, 25 years. There is nothing better than being able to have a very long-term relationship where you can see the miracles happen. So I want to support that in your life. So, Ruth, do you have anything final that you would like to say before we close out this evening?
The thing that came to my mind is that I think that one of the most important things that we can learn in this lifetime is to really learn to love women, to learn to love ourselves, to love one another, to really explore sisterhood. That is the end of misogyny and is the end of female self-hatred. How to learn to really and truly love and honor women. And so I wish everyone that journey, that it go well, and that you come out with that deeper appreciation for yourself and all your sisters. Blessed be.
Blessed be. Thank you so much, Ruth, and thank you who have stuck with us, even though we've gone a few minutes over time. We will be back next Tuesday with Andrea Goodman. We are changing. I'm going to remind you again, we're changing to Tuesday night, and we'll see you there. Until then, may you be blessed. Good evening.
Good evening.